Okay. Good morning. So, I think what was the last discussion here? Limitations of Harrod Dormer, right? That was a and you have there's some questions that are posted. Did you all try something? No? Okay. Okay, so let's move forward. Let's discuss one more model, Lewis model, and then we'll start planning. Okay. See, this model also was used indirectly in the Indian planning system. Okay, so this model was indirectly visible in the Indian planning system. That is why this model is also important. Today I will give you some brief introduction of some mains questions also, like what has to be done, how do we write. Okay, so maybe after discussing this model we will see. Okay, so if there are questions like critically analyze investment-led growth model, of course I have dictated critically analyze investment-led growth models. Suppose the question says critically analyze investment-led growth model, or the question can be something like to achieve $5 trillion economy, investment-led growth model is the model which government has decided to follow. Okay, and briefly discuss the pros and cons of this particular investment-led growth model. There can be questions like this also. In UPSC 2018, there was one 10-marker question which was posted yesterday in your assignment. That was a UPSC previous question. What was posted yesterday? The question says savings is one of the important factor for economic growth. Savings is one of the important factors for economic growth. What are the other things other than savings which can affect economic growth? Something like this, right? That was the question. Like savings is one of the important factors for economic growth. What are the other things other than savings which can? No, I'm not asking for the answer. Wait. I'll give you a chance. Wait. So what are the other things other than savings which can affect economic growth? Now the whole economy part, complete economic main syllabus. Our introductions can be pulled from. Sir, you have said to explain the limits, okay, of Harrod Dormer. Okay. We have discussed, no? Harrod Dormer limitations we have written? Written, no? We have not discussed, huh? We have discussed, no? What, no? No, wait. What are the limitations of Harrod Dormer? In the beginning itself, we were talking about Harrod Dormer. I said, in a country like India, what are the challenges of Harrod Dormer model to be implemented? That is what you have written actually there. Okay, so you have not understood those? I have not discussed. Okay, we'll discuss. Okay, so come back. That takes 5 minutes only. So now the question is, when we are looking at planning or economic planning, what we have to see is most of the economy questions, almost 90% of economy questions, we can write our introductions from history. History in the sense, that means I will pull my intros directly from planning. Why am I doing that is basically to save time in the exam hall. Basically what will happen is in 8.5 minutes to complete an answer becomes very difficult, and that is the reason I will generally try to pull introductions from the history. So when we are discussing planning or when we are discussing this investment, savings, whatever it is, Okay, if there is a question, how do I pull it from history is the question. How do I pull my introductions from history becomes very, very important. Okay, so that is, there are different types of questions. One is the questions where they directly ask you, for example, what is financial inclusion? What is financial inclusion? And how financial inclusion is important for inclusive growth. Simple way, simple way. A simple English question. What is financial inclusion? Question mark. Okay, and how financial inclusion becomes instrumental for bringing in inclusive growth. Inclusive growth, including everybody in the growth process. So for such questions, there is no way out. I should directly define definition of financial inclusion. Okay, so what is financial inclusion then? Okay, then there are certain questions. There are certain questions where directly they do not ask you what is financial inclusion. They may ask something like aspects like they can ask you something like aspects like financial inclusion, or they can ask you something like banking related aspects. Suppose they can ask you something like if inclusive growth has to be made a reality. Inclusive growth has to be made a reality. That means including everybody. Okay, along with government policies. Along with government policies, even aspects like financial inclusion and Digital India program become a necessity. Discuss. Okay, don't worry about the question. I'm only talking about a direct question. I'm only talking about a indirect question. There is something called a direct question. Another one is an indirect question. Direct question means what is financial inclusion? I write the definition. Another one is to make inclusive growth a reality. Means I need not define what is inclusive growth if it's a 10 marker. I think you're getting my point. No? You get it very clear. I need not define inclusive growth is including everybody in the process of my economic growth is not needed when the question is indirect. Are you able to get my point? So for indirect type of questions, I will push my introductions from history. History means when we are reading planning, don't look at planning only from the factual point of view, that is prelims point of view. You will also look at planning from the evolution point of view. Evolution point of view means inclusive growth as a concept evolved from the 6th 5-year plan onwards, where we started completely focusing on poverty. Is poverty done for you? Okay, so poverty, when we talk about poverty, direct approach with respect to poverty, when we talk about those food calorie method, 2,400 calories in rural areas and 2,100 calories in urban areas, you have discussed, right? Okay, so this food calorie method was standardized basically during which 5-year plan? Basically in the 6th 5-year plan. Are you able to get my point? Similarly, there was something like you'll observe banks nationalization that was done in 1969. Okay, so during a plan holiday, I'll come to planning. So it is only an intro. What I'm trying to tell you is, so that means my introduction will be from history. So inclusiveness as a concept is not new. The mechanism got started way back in 60s through the concepts of something like focusing on poverty, nationalization of banks. Nationalization of banks means what? You're nationalizing banks so that you will spread the banking services to everybody. Are you able to get this? So like this, that means my introduction will be from history and my conclusion will be from current affairs. This is standard. This is standard and this is a best standard. Why this is a best standard is when I'm correcting or whenever anybody is correcting the sheet, he will see the conclusion before turning the page. So when I'm seeing the conclusion before I turn the page, conclusion would be in the present budget 2022-23, okay, government has come up with so-and-so mechanism for ensuring inclusive growth. Are you able to get my point? Okay, so this is just a viewpoint to tell you like, okay, so students have lot of doubts and last points have not been, what was that? It's covered, cleared or something. You've got the idea? Understood. So when this is to tell you that today I'll discuss 1 or 2 main questions. So when I'm discussing also, this is the approach. So when we are reading something, what could be my introduction from history? What could be my conclusion from current? So when you're reading magazine, also the same approach for financial inclusion, for inclusive growth, for banking, for government spending on infrastructure. So with respect to infrastructure or investment, currently government is focusing on public investment as stated in the budget, where government has decided to spend around 32% on investment. This is something like the current fact. Are you able to get this? Okay, so when I am writing investment related questions also, in the conclusion, currently what budget was, in the budget what is the spending, or currently what is the strategy. This would be your approach, standard approach. Once we practice for 7, 8 or 9 questions, automatically it will become a habit. It will become a habit that in the conclusion I will write current affairs. Getting my point? No. Rather than concluding saying that like this, hence proved, we will write hence proved, yes, hence. Like rather than writing hence proved, put that fact, tell that fellow I know. Tell that fellow I know I am different from others. Give me half mark more for my question. 20 questions, it is 10 marks more. Okay, almost 70 marks more in GS. Means it is IAS or Armed Force Headquarters Service. So there's a lot of difference, right? So I think you got my point, right? That you have to keep in mind. So planning, don't look at planning. First 5-year plan, growth, kitha tha. What did they achieve? This is okay. That is needed. That we will see anyhow. That is there in the PPT. Getting my point, right? Okay. So now challenges of Harrod-Domar, that is what you wanted. Points are dictated, right? Harrod-Domar model, you will only tell me what were the main challenges without looking into your book first. Okay, so one is Harrod-Domar model main challenges. Just talk about Harrod-Domar model challenges with respect to India only. With respect to India. Okay. Propensity to save. In a country like India, propensity to save will be less, and moreover, the gap between savings and investment has increased even more during COVID pandemic. Yes. Are you able to get this? Gap between savings and investment. Very simple. I put the money in the bank, money stays in the bank. Money stays in the bank. Okay. So in the banking concept, of course, it is not something like the liquidity trap. Of course, this is a liquidity trap did not happen in India. In Japan, it happened. In Japan, what happened is liquidity trap means what? In spite of giving loans at least interest possible, you say let's give loan at 0.2% interest also, still public is not interested to take loan. That means the liquid cash is getting trapped in the banking system. It did not happen in India. Not India, but liquidity trap means nothing can be done by the banking system. Banking system at max can do what? At max, banking system can reduce interest rates. At max, banking system to handle inflation, what can it do? To handle inflation, what can it do? It can increase interest rates. That's all. Beyond that, what can a bank do in terms of handling inflation? Very limited. Very limited. Food inflation cannot be handled by the banking system. Food inflation cannot be handled. And in our CPI index, 44-45% is food only. So bank has its own limitations that you should understand. Okay. Now, gap between savings and investment means it will happen when the investor, that is, the corporate is not taking loan, then also it stays with the bank. Banks are not interested in giving loans. Why banks will not be interested? Market is bad or problems of twin balance sheet syndrome. Yesterday I have explained this. Okay, so this is the problems. Okay, then what else? What are the problems for? In countries like India, assuming a standard capital output ratio or a constant capital output ratio, constant. You can't assume, okay, capital output ratio is going to be 5, 6, 7. It keeps jumping because there are a lot of bottlenecks. Bottleneck means there are a lot of problems, lot of issues basically, lot of issues. Issues can be from the labor side, issues can be from the supply chain side, issues can be from the government policy. Earlier, every new government comes up, it comes up with a new policy. If you observe, 1960s, Congress government says, we'll come up with this policy. Then in 1978, Janta government comes and says, no, let's follow one more method. Are you able to get this? This is basically, if there is no proper long-term plan or there is no proper political stability, you can never expect proper investment. One of the prerequisites for investment is political stability. Political stability and policy stability. Policy should be long-term. You can't keep on changing policy. Okay. So, and capital output ratios also, assuming this is also a big challenge in India. Is this clear? Okay. So, that is also a negative as far as India is concerned. What else? What else is the NPA is all over. Okay, so NPA is in that TBS only. In the TBS included, point is included. This is something like lack of, I have written it in a different format, that the developing countries do not have banking penetration. Okay, or I can write it in a different format. There is lack of financial inclusion. Financial inclusion means you don't have the spread of banking system. Lack of, this is lack of, lack of financial inclusion means, now though we are saying, you know, everybody should have a bank account from 1960s, 70s, etc. In 2015 also, we are still talking about Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. That means we have not achieved financial inclusion. As simple as that. Not achieved financial. See why financial inclusion is important for inclusive growth? Why financial inclusion is important for inclusive growth? No. Increase saving, you're only there only, in our topic only. You're not moving out of the topic. There you're stuck.
Sir, because the population will connect towards the formal banking sector, then they get more benefits of the banking sector. Then they can take loans from the bank.
Loans and all is okay. First of all, government, simple, think from basic angle. Inclusive growth, include everybody in my growth process. Okay, this is what is inclusive growth. Okay, so this is possible. Okay, if this is possible, that means there are some people who are excluded from the market. Excluded from the market. Very important this is. All bureaucrats, all schemes, etc. are for those who are excluded from the market. Today, primary education, primary health care also is part of marketization of services. Marketization. Today you become ill because of COVID, you get admitted into a private hospital and you say, my life is important because of Article 21 of the Constitution. He will say, pay the bill. This is what is marketization of services. Your die means die. But you pay the bill, only then treatment. As simple as that. That is what is marketization. Poor, rich, doesn't matter. Pay the bill and get the job done. This is what is marketization of services. And there are several people in India, even today, who are outside the market. Outside the market means they are excluded from the market. And all schemes which you come up with, bureaucrats have to implement schemes, etc. for the welfare of the poor, not for the rich. Okay, so those who are excluded from the market, you have to do something. Okay, this is basically, that means without financial inclusion is there means you have bank accounts, your subsidies directly will come to your bank account. That means corruption, leakages will be less. Inclusive growth is a possibility. Otherwise, according to Planning Commission, every 5 rupees that is spent at the top, only 1 rupee is reaching. Okay, as Kautilya mentioned, corruption is as good as like fish in the water. You don't even know whether the fish is having water or not. In the similar manner, you can't even check whether the public officer is corrupt or not. So that is what he was talking about, Sama Danda all. So that means regulation and all that, right? Okay, so therefore, if you want to stop corruption, if you want to bring efficiency, if you want to bring in inclusiveness, it is basically you have to come up with something like financial inclusion so that subsidies directly go into his account. And this will also help in market economy. I will not give him kerosene, subsidized rice, etc. I will give him cash directly into his account. Go to the market, buy kerosene if you want. Buy rice if you want. That means I'm also promoting what? I'm also promoting market economy. This is something which you should. And without financial inclusion, what will happen? The money will not get channelized into the banking system. This is also important. Banking system. Then only savings will get converted into investment. Another important challenge is in the informal economy in India is basically unemployment. You have done, right? In that you would have discussed formal jobs, informal jobs. Okay. More is the informal economy. More is the informal economy. This is also a challenge. More is the informal economy, automatically it will affect what? Savings. Informalization, okay, he will be getting payments in cash. The calm value is sweeping the floor, okay, or the lower levels, or the chai wala outside, okay, somebody is working in the restaurant, hotel, the hotel supplier, etc., the supplier boy, etc. This is all informal. Informalization means money will not completely get channelized into the banking system, then automatically their family savings will not get into the banking system, then savings, difficulty with respect to savings getting converted into investment. So that is also more informal economy also is a challenge. Next is, we are also dependent on foreign debt. Why you are dependent on debt? When your savings are not much, so obviously initial years also we were more dependent on debt. So this debt can be, one is external, government is borrowing from outside. Government, debt is always bad beyond a limit. Debt is always bad. So some may say, sir, is debt always bad or sometimes is it good? It is good provided if debt is used for something like you're using it for infrastructure. But if you're borrowing for the sake of what? Welfare, borrowing for welfare, that debt will lead you, push you into debt trap. Debt trap? Okay, so welfare is not bad, but borrowing and doing welfare, which we had to do during COVID, there is no other option, and therefore we borrowed and government had to spend money on poor people or schemes and whatever it is. So debt burden, more external debt also is a challenge for the government. Okay, why? Because its investment will have a problem. Are able to get this? Government cannot invest into infrastructure. Here I am talking about which investment? Public investment. Here I am talking about public investment. So public investment is also a prerequisite. So another challenge is public investment is also a prerequisite. That will not happen. Are you able to get this point? So all these are points where, Harrod-Domar model. And another challenge, Harrod-Domar model is mainly for handling unemployment problem in which countries? Developed countries. So Harrod-Domar model was primarily focusing on handling a type of unemployment which we call it as what unemployment? Cyclical unemployment. This is discussed in the class, right? So cyclical unemployment, because developed countries mainly, unemployment is mainly because of the challenge called demand. If I can create demand, how do I create demand? Through investment. Investment, capital formation, jobs, I'll create demand. Okay, jobs. Once jobs get created, then again demand will propel, and therefore a cyclical unemployment problem can be handled. But in the developing country, just by handling demand, we cannot solve the problem of what? Unemployment, as stated in the Harrod-Domar model. So in India, we cannot solve unemployment problem just by handling something called as what? Demand. Demand alone will not solve the problem of unemployment in countries like India. This is also a negative of pushing Harrod-Domar model, because Harrod-Domar model primarily was for what? Handling chronic unemployment problem in developed countries, but not in developing nations. Why? In developing nations, unemployment is in different formats. Unemployment can be in the format of what? Disguised, remember? Okay, disguised you have done. So disguised unemployment linked to agriculture, where the marginal productivity of labor will be zero. Agriculture, right? Disguised is done. So in India, disguised unemployment cannot be handled only through demand. Two, in India we have challenges of jobless growth, that is basically employment elasticity. Heard of this word? Yeah. Employment elasticity is less or more in India? ठीक है. Wait. Don't turn your pages. Employment elasticity is something like when you're comparing with GDP growth, what is change in GDP, change in employment to change in GDP. Okay. When your GDP is growing, if proportionately your employment is also growing, are you able to get my point? Then your employment elasticity is high. But India's case, after 1990, we find employment elasticity is falling. That means GDP is growing in the denominator, but proportionately jobs are not getting created in the numerator. Are you able to get this? This is what is employment elasticity. Employment elasticity going down indicates what? It indicates, it will indicate that jobless growth, jobs are not getting created in spite of there being what? Growth. Multiple reasons for jobless growth. Why? It was coming in, growth was coming in which sector mainly? Growth was coming in services sector. Growth was mainly coming in services sector. Two, most of the people in India are still dependent on what? Agriculture. Three, even today we failed in terms of developing which sector? Manufacturing. Manufacturing is still stagnant. Stagnant. How do you pull people from agriculture to manufacturing? Like this. Therefore, we have challenges like this, and also we have challenges of what? Structural unemployment. You know what is structural unemployment? Skill sets and all. Okay, so that means only by handling demand, you cannot solve all these problems in India. India is a different ball game. You cannot take India in the same sense as a developed nation. And therefore, Harrod Dahmer's primary logic of solving unemployment in developed countries will not be applicable as far as India is concerned. Okay, so that means the change in Harrod Dahmer should be what? If really Harrod Dahmer has to do something good for India, the change should be something like, what should happen is this investment which is coming, which Harrod Dahmer is talking about, no? This investment which Harrod Dahmer is talking about should be something like labor intensive. It should come into what sectors? It should come into labor intensive sectors. If Harrod Dahmer has to be really modified for countries like India, then this investment which you are talking about, that capital formation which is happening, it is not about big machines, etc. The money should move, or capital should be coming up into labor intensive sectors. Labor intensive sectors, even in services, there are labor intensive sectors. Services, for example, in services, we have labor intensive sectors like what? Tourism. Tourism is a labor intensive sector which we have neglected. In fact, footwear is a labor intensive sector actually. What happened? China was losing its value. That is, China's labor cost was increasing in China. So China was losing the #1 position. Then everybody thought India will occupy the position. But India could not. There are other countries like Bangladesh, Philippines. They started running faster than India to occupy or grab global markets with respect to labor intensive sectors. Labor intensive, more labor is needed. Here the work of technology in India should not be to replace labor. Here the work of investment should be in the format of creating more jobs. Then only Harrod Dahmer will really become somewhat useful or successful for India. Probably that can be a right conclusion. If I want to really use Harrod Dahmer for India, the investment which Harrod Dahmer is talking about should be made into labor intensive sectors which can create more jobs. Are you able to get my point? Okay, then only Harrod Dahmer probably holds some relevance as far as Indian economy is concerned. Is this okay? That's all. Very important. Harrod Dahmer is not important. This analysis is important. Tomorrow, any question like he's asking how investment can work, job creation, wherever it is, I will talk about capital output ratio. You can talk about all this. I think you got my point, right? Okay, so done. Let's move forward. Done? Okay. The next one. Lewis, again the word Lewis means not. Indian model? No. We are not interested so much in Indian. Okay. We are not interested so much in Indian. We were more into, Western economic models. Okay, so, but later on some Mahalanobis, etc., okay, which we followed in second 5-year plan was somewhat okay. But otherwise, we are more into the Western economic models. So, Lewis theory, basically Lewis came up with something like a two-sector theory. Lewis came up with a two-sector theory. Lewis came up with something like a two-sector theory. Okay. Now, Lewis has submitted a paper. Later, Lewis has won a Nobel Prize also in 1970s. So he came up with something like he submitted his papers on economic development with unlimited supplies of labor. Okay. So Lewis was talking about something like economic development with unlimited supplies of labor. Economic development will unlimited supplies of labor. Okay. And in this, what he was trying to explain is, he has assumed two sectors. He has assumed two sectors. One is basically, he was calling it as the primary sector, which we call it as our agriculture, or he was calling it as a subsistence. Okay. And another one, he was calling it as something like the modern sector. Modern sector. Modern is something like the industry. According to him, modern is something like industry. But he was using the words modern, subsistence. Lewis assumed a wider format of subsistence. A wider format of subsistence means not just agriculture. He also included urban poor. Agricultural labor. Okay. He also included domestic servants. Wider kind of subsistence. Wider kind of subsistence he was assuming. Okay. Not just subsistence is just what subsistence generally means. You're talking about primary sector, right? Primary, that is the agriculture. But he assumed a wider aspect of subsistence, where he was including not just the agriculture, but also urban poor or also domestic servants, whatever it is, he included. And modern is something like our manufacturing, our industry. So his logic is very simple, whatever you have discussed in your unemployment to some extent. So initially what he says is, in every economy, you will find most of the labor are dependent on this subsistence sector. That means you will find maximum labor involved with primary sector. They are continuously working with the primary sector, most of them. Even today, India, of course, India is a different case. Even today we find that India, major chunk is still dependent on agriculture. But what he says is, every country, initially, most of the people will be dependent on primary sector. In fact, there will be more people than required who are working with the primary sector or the subsistence sector. So more people than required who are working with the primary sector means automatically what will happen? The labor productivity. What will happen to their productivity? Labor productivity will be less. Or this labor marginal productivity. Marginal? Okay, you know this word marginal? Yes, additional productivity. You are adding one additional labor. This one additional labor, what is the output this one additional labor is creating? So this marginal productivity is very, very less. You are adding on labor, additional labor is marginal productivity is very, very less. That means what? Labor is inefficient. Because there are more people than required who are working in this subsistence sector. Then it is, what is his logic? He says, there is another sector here which is slowly developing, which is called as the manufacturing or our industrial sector. And slowly this idle labor, since a lot of labor is available, now this labor has to be slowly shifted. To the secondary sector or the industry. Slowly shift this labor to this industry. And when you are shifting them also, there will not be any problem with respect to this sector, because already their productivity is less. So when you are shifting the labor, the impact on this agriculture sector will be minimum, because they are not contributing much. And therefore this subsistence sector will not be affected when you shift this labor from the primary or the subsistence sector to the manufacturing or the modern sector. Are you able to get this? And when you're shifting them, what he believes is, Lewis believes that industry will be the prime moving force. Industry will only be the prime moving force or a turnaround sector which can propel the economic growth of the country. He also believed, like we believed after independence, we also believed what it is industry that is going to keep our economic growth on track. It is industry that will increase our growth at a faster pace. It is industry that will increase the economic growth and not agriculture. Same way, Lewis also believed that it is going to be the modern sector that will propel the economic growth of a particular country. Now what he assumes now, two assumptions he makes. Lewis makes two assumptions. First assumption, when there is so much of labor that is available, lot of labor available now, for this industrialist, lot of labor is available. So for this industrialist, initially what will happen is, the labor cost, what he observes is, the labor cost or the wages, when you are shifting them from primary to secondary, these wages initially will be, his first assumption, these wages will be low and constant. His wages will be low and constant for a longer period of time. Low and constant. Why low and constant? Because you have lot of idle labor available. There's lot of idle labor available, and when you're shifting, when you have lot of idle labor available, so the labor costs or labor wages in the manufacturing will be low and constant for a longer period of time, and this is the period the manufacturer or the industrialist has to make maximum amount of what? Profits. You are going to channelize this idle labor, and they are going to work for lesser wages for a longer period of time. This lesser wages will be there, constant wages will be there, and that is the time he has to maximize on using this labor to increase the efficiency in his industry. This is what he assumes. Second assumption he makes is, after this profits which he is going to make, that is, the industrialist, whenever is going to make profits, this industrialist is going to invest these profits back into the industry. So whenever he is making profits, he is going to earn profits. These profits will be reinvested back into the industry. How are you going to reinvest it back into the industry? You will be coming up with new capital. You will be coming up with what? New machines. Are you able to get my point? No. So he's making profits. So second assumption. This is an assumption only. You may ask, sir, what if he's not interested in, if he goes and buys something for his wife? Okay. Probability is there, no. Whatever profit I am getting, no, go buy for his wife or something. Then how? Then that is an assumption. Assumption is the industrialist will reinvest back his profits into the industry, and that is basically he will come up with better machines, better capital formation. Okay, and thereby the efficiency of the industry will increase at a faster pace. The efficiency of the industry will increase at a faster pace. Are you able to follow? Is this clear? The efficiency of the industry will increase at a faster pace. Everybody? Okay. And this industry of the modern sector will keep our growth on, or keep our economic growth on a faster trajectory. It is not agriculture which will be a turnaround sector. It will be the industry which will propel our growth. And over a period of time, when these profits get reinvested, the economic growth will become self-propelling. Self-propelling means automatically the process starts moving and the growth starts increasing. Are you able to get this? Are you able to get this? This is what he assumes. This is what he talks about. Then, this unlimited labor is not for unlimited period of time. But afterwards what may happen? You started pulling everybody into industry. Then labor will be limited. Then based on labor productivity, how efficient the labor is, based on which that point of time, based on labor productivity, the wages will be determined. The wages will be determined later, based on what? Labor productivity. Only if there is labor productivity, higher wages will be given. Number one. Number two, when he is adding more machines, machine per worker will increase. Machine per worker will increase means automatically the efficiency of the labor will also increase. Are you able to, this is okay. Machine per worker. I am teaching without a digital board or Zoom. My efficiency or output is less. My productivity is less because I am catering to only 200 students. When I am teaching with a digital board, with Zoom, is something like capital per worker. Capital per worker has increased, then my labor productivity will also increase because I am able to teach to more than 2000 students, means my efficiency is increasing. Are you able to get my point? So over a period of time, if capital per worker, machine per worker, if it is going to increase, then automatically what will happen? Wages will, the efficiency will increase. This is what Lewis says. This is what Lewis says. But there are negatives also. Okay, this is what he has talked about. Okay, what are the negatives? What are the negatives? Two negatives here. First is, he has made an assumption. First assumption. What is the assumption he made? When I am pulling people from the rural or agriculture to industry, first assumption is wages will be what? Low and constant. What if the labor says, you have to give me more money? Are you able to get my point? Only if you pay me more, then I will think of shifting. First assumption, challenge. Okay. Second assumption he made is the profits which the industrialist is earning, profits will be reinvested. There is no guarantee. Okay. Three, profits, this is an assumption, no? Profits will be reinvested back into the industry. What if he is not interested? What if he is not interested in reinvesting wages, reinvesting his profits back into the industry? That is the second assumption. Third challenge is, what if he is going to come up with capital intensive technology? What if he is going to come up with capital intensive technology which can replace labor? This capital intensive technology tomorrow, if it is going to replace labor, that means you are coming up with such machines which will replace labor altogether, then this you have shifted them, but unemployment problem starts increasing. So these are the challenges. These are the other sides of Lewis model, other sides of Lewis. Is this clear? Now Lewis becomes important for India because in the first 5-year plan plus in the second 5-year plan, we focused on what? We focused on heavy industry. In the second 5-year plan, we said, let us focus on heavy industry. Okay. See, in India, basically, India was one such country which was, completely, suffering because of the interference of other countries. For example, have you know about Winston Churchill? What is your opinion? Useless fellow. See, let's be blunt, no? Let's be blunt. Okay, so Winston Churchill, why diplomacy? He may be good. Okay. No, okay. It is only extreme. Here or there. Okay, so when there was Bengal famine, everybody thinks people died, skeletons moved out of our body, and people were starving to death. Kids, bones were coming out. And that was the period. Food grains were not there. What he did, existing food grains also, he shifted it off from India, because tomorrow if Japanese forces enter India, they should find the terrain difficult to enter. Are you able to get this point? No, terrain difficult because food is not there, availability of resources is not there. Probably the Japanese people will find it even more difficult to sustain. He is such a ruthless man that he took away food grains which were available when the people are dying. There was some request made by the British officers here. People are literally dying. Why don't you send? There was one officer who sent some 40 metric tons. For that there was a big fight. They took away 60 already. And that was a period when Subhash Chandra Bose sent 1 lakh tons of food grain to India. And that was also not accepted because of, they were not political, I say, ideological differences. Ideology. He was with the Axis powers. Okay. So ideological differences. Like this, people starved, died like that. But after 1947, okay, we said we will come up with a planning model. We have to plan our country. Food security was not there. Again, we will have to go to US for food security. For investment, again to foreign countries. For aid, again to foreign countries. Are you able to get this? This was the history. So whenever we were dependent on somebody, or whenever somebody, so some people ask, what is the benefit of freedom? One student asked. What did this country give me? Or what is the benefit? What did this country give me? You'll understand if you're born in Northwest Frontier Province. Where is it? Afghanistan and Pakistan border. Every day running only. Okay, running to fire the rockets on your, you keep the missile on your shoulder, start running. UPSC preparation. With the missile on your shoulder. Now the challenge is from the beginning, and still you are very, very keen in terms of adopting Western related models, which I don't understand. Or is it because we did not have proper research that, you wanted to bring in there, you want to grow fast. Think of some models which would be apt for India. We did not do. We were saying, let's think of Harrod Domer, let's think of Lewis. Okay, but Indian conditions were completely different at that point of time. Even today, if you see, Abhijit Banerjee has won Nobel Prize in economics. Yes. And what is the precondition for winning a Nobel Prize in economics? First is you should live longer. Otherwise, how youngster you will not give? Okay, after 70 only you will give. Okay, number 2, poverty you are doing research. But where are you doing the research from? Not in India. Are you able to get my point? No, subject is poverty. But where are you doing your research from? US or some other country? It clearly shows you do not have scope for doing research, etc. in developing countries like India. So as simple as that, no. When you want to grow, there is nothing like scope for research, nothing like scope for research and development. Obviously, you will be dependent on technologies, machines from which country? Other countries. From the beginning till today, this is our situation. From the beginning till today, this is our situation, including the models which we have adopted. Even climate change summits, all that, if you're reading climate change summits, no, what they do, climate change summits. They go eat samosa, tea and waste money, come back. India, yes or no? And one more question will come in UPSC, that's all. Otherwise, climate change summits, there is no significant, developing countries cannot sign. If they ask me, India, we will not sign any binding agreement. You cannot think of sustainability. Somebody was asking sustainability, sustainable development, future generation, unless and until I handle poverty today. Are you able to get my point? If I handle poverty today, then I will think about sustainable, what is sustainable development, etc., etc. And all other countries, force countries like India, why don't you come up with what? Sustainable development. If we want, we will. If we don't want, we will not. We are eating the polluted food. Why are you worried? We are eating polluted food. We love living in Delhi in pollution. Why are you worried? It is basically, the question is, the stages of development of different countries is different. So you cannot compare, including China with India, and moreover, you cannot compare a developed country with developing nations like India. How do you compare a developed nation with a developing nation? Impossible. Impossible. We cannot compare a developed country. Then how can these developed countries' models be applicable? It is difficult. For example, in developed country, technology is mainly for replacing labor. Why? Labor availability is less. They do not have demographic dividend. Demographic dividend is not there. Young population is not there. Machine is better for them. Now today Canada is calling you. Why? They don't have energy to work. They want you to come and work. Simple as that. So technology will replace labor there. But if the same technologies will replace labor in countries like India, then there will be unrest. I think you're getting my point. Okay, here technology should become efficient. At the same time, technology should also get into labor intensive. Technology can never replace something like, should not be replacing labor. If it does, automatically there will be challenges. Hope it is clear. Understood? We use this model, that is why Lewis becomes important. I hope you have followed Lewis. Okay, we did it when? First 5-year plan to movement to second 5-year plan, etc. So we put the heading. I will finish this off. Put the heading Lewis. Of course, we'll mind our words when you're writing notes, and in the exam also, middle path, middle path. Exam, middle path. Yeah. So you know, I know that you know that middle path. Write down. Lewis model. In 1954, Sir Arthur Lewis. If you don't want Sir, remove. Okay. Arthur Lewis published a paper entitled Economic Development with Unlimited Supplies of Labor. Economic development with unlimited supplies of labor. Okay. His model mainly postulates two sectors. His model mainly postulates two sectors. One subsistence, two modern. One subsistence, two modern. This can also be termed as agriculture and industry. Although Lewis meant a broader class of subsistence, which included agricultural labor, urban poor, domestic servants, etc. Continue, full stop and continue. Generally, rural subsistence sector is characterized by zero marginal labor productivity. That is, surplus labor can be withdrawn. From the agricultural sector, without any loss of output, and hence This surplus when shifted to industrial sector, and hence this surplus when shifted to industrial sector will improve productivity. Will improve productivity. Continue. There is continuous labor migration. There is continuous labor migration there is continuous labor migration from traditional to modern sector. From traditional to modern sector. Traditional to modern sector. Wages, full stop and continue. Wages remain constant and low. Wages remain constant and low. Constant and low for longer periods of time. Wages remain constant and low for longer periods of time. And economic growth occurs. And economic growth occurs as a rising share of profits. As a rising share of profits get reinvested. As a rising share of profits get reinvested. Okay, continue. In the Lewis model, eventually, the reservoir of cheap labor gets exhausted. Eventually, the reservoir of cheap labor gets exhausted. Comma. Capital accumulation slows down. Capital accumulation slows down. And wages get determined by marginal productivity. Marginal productivity. Okay. Okay. Next, put the side heading. Relevance of Lewis model for India. Relevance of Lewis model for India. Relevance of Lewis model for India. Okay. Continue. Nehru's approach was also based on Lewis model. Nehru's approach was also based on Lewis model. The basic idea was that India had an agricultural labor. India had an agricultural labor with very low levels of productivity. With very low levels of productivity. And this surplus labor when shifted to industrial sector, it increases marginal productivity. It increases marginal productivity. It increases marginal productivity. Full stop. Continue. Speed is okay, no? Yeah, if industrial sector is promoted, if industrial sector is promoted, it will generate profit, it will generate profit, and this profit when invested back, and this profit when invested back into machines and tools, this profit when invested back into machines and tools, the capital per worker will increase, the capital per worker will increase, and this in turn will boost profits. And this in turn will boost profits, leading to capital formation, leading to capital formation at a faster rate, leading to capital formation at a faster rate. Full stop. Last two lines. Thus, the basic understanding has been, thus the basic understanding has been basic understanding has been that agricultural sector will not be the prime moving force, that agricultural sector will not be the prime moving force to increase economic growth, to increase economic growth, increase economic growth at a faster pace, to increase economic growth at a faster pace. Okay. So initially we also believed which sector? Industry only. Prime moving force as industry. Last, criticisms, two lines. Criticisms, write down criticisms. Criticism. 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 One, capitalist profits may not be reinvested. Capitalist profits may not be reinvested. Two, capitalists may focus on capital intensive technology. Capitalists may focus on capital intensive technology. Three, constant wage rate in manufacturing, constant wage rate in manufacturing is questionable. Is questionable. Is questionable. Okay. Fine. Okay, okay. So, fine. So, one more model, briefly we will discuss. Briefly we will discuss one more model, that is the PC Mahal. It is similar to this only. PC Mahalanobis model. Okay. Let me explain this. I'll explain this and then we can write a short note on this. Okay. So, yes.
But despite knowing that there are many problems with the investment-led growth model, that's why China is shifting from it. So why are we are going towards it?
Huh? No, no. China is not shifting. China is still with investment-led growth, number one. Number two, India's case, our consumption rates are dropping. Consumption rates. Consumption rates means in that, see, if you have to understand this, after we have written there, no. So here if you see, in this formula, to answer his doubt, GDP is equal to the C plus I plus G plus net exports. This is what? Okay. So earlier our GDP was coming from C. Now what we are saying, we will focus more on I, and to this I, again I will also put in, along with private investment, I will also do what? Public investment. But the logic here is, over a period of time, India's case, the rate of C, the rate of consumption, any country from developing to developed, the rate of consumption will, there is every chance that rate of consumption is going to drop. This is the reason, no, rate of consumption is dropping. And I also explained, if you could recollect our previous class, I also explained something like, if I am consuming more, I will save less. If I am saving more, automatically my consumption will drop. This is accepted. Okay, if I am saving more, my consumption will drop. But this investment is increasing. Okay, production is increasing, capital formation, output. But I cannot, this increased production, I cannot just depend on what? Only C. This is one. So when C is dropping, I cannot completely depend on C. I should think of what? I should think of exports, or in this formula, I should think of what? X. Are you able to get this? Number one. Number two, India's case, we have to create more jobs, I told you. More jobs. Okay, one diagram, if you don't get confused, will be, in the exam also we can draw this diagram. If investment-led growth model, if you come up with investment-led growth model, it is like something like you can create more jobs. More jobs. How is the question? Basically, I will create more jobs through focusing on one, research and development. This is a diagram which you can draw from the previous economic surveys. Two, I am becoming stronger in the supply chain. That means across the supply chains. Across the supply chain means what? Raw material supplier, distributor, retail shop, across all this. If Amul is not going to sell ice creams, then in the retail shop jobs are gone. If Amul is not buying raw materials from the cooperatives, jobs in the cooperatives are gone. If I become efficient with respect to exports, I will strengthen my supply chain, enlarge my supply chain, means across my supply chain, from the supplier till the retail shop, I will be able to create what? Jobs. Are you able to get my point? Okay, and R&D is something which will increase technology efficiency, means R&D will, on one side, R&D will also enhance what? My exports. Apple is not entrepreneurial skill. Remember, Apple is performing like this is not because of Steve Jobs' business skills. It is because of 9 years of effort into research and development. We should understand this. That product is today a different product. It does not need marketing. You will not have Ranveer Singh coming like Oppo and all saying, "Chalo, click." Okay, it sells. This is not marketing. This is not about what you call as entrepreneurial skill. It is mainly because of what? 9.5 years they have spent. 9.5 years on innovation, on R&D. So if you want to come up with such products which will distinguish, you have to spend an R&D, and jobs also will, over a period of time, industrialization for jobs will also get created in R&D sector. That is also needed, because these jobs cannot be replaced by robots. These jobs which require thinking skills and brains. Across the supply chain management, I will create jobs. And again, capital formation. Heard of capital formation means I'm coming up with more factories, more machines. More factories means what? Automatically I'm going to come up with, create more jobs in the factories, more factories. Across all this, you will be able to create what? Jobs. Number one. Number two, China was successful in terms of creating more jobs than India, though inequalities are high in China. The number of jobs created in China are more than India, though I've discussed inequalities are high. Inequality in China is high, but jobs created in China was more. And China also followed this model, investment led. You may ask, at this moment, it may not be that, it may not look so rosy. It may not look so apt that investment led. But over a period at least, you have to come up with this investment led growth model if India has to be made that target 5 trillion. So jobs creation happens across all this. Supply chain, jobs get created. Factories, capital formation, jobs get created. R&D, jobs get created. You become more efficient, exports, more money moves in, our incomes will increase. Our incomes will increase, our savings will increase, then investment, again jobs. So that is the reason. Otherwise, why will they think of this model? Okay, but negative is also there. Everything will have a negative. Okay. Okay, so why China is struggling, so why should we go? We have to go because rate of consumption is dropping, mainly. Rate of consumption is dropping. Is it only for us? Any developing country moving from developing to developed, the rate of consumption will drop. Are you able to get this? Okay. And moreover, jobs means, over a period if jobs get created, even C will get increased. Are you able to get this? No, if jobs get created in that formula which we are talking about, over a period, if jobs get increased, the overall C will also get increased. This will also get, if this also has to increase, the main logic, main aspect, why this C is falling during COVID, unemployment, if you can create more jobs through investment-led growth model, even C will increase. Okay, so that is how growth will come. Answered? Yes. See, there is no way you can follow pure socialism. Simple. Somebody, sir, we saw farm laws which also suggested to bring technology, farming, and clearly with what less labor will be required for agriculture production, and they'll shift towards other sectors. Like, so can we say that these laws were also inspired from Lewis model? Okay. See, farm laws, Modi ji will, it is basically farm laws. You can't think about, first of all, Modi ji will not think about Lewis. When the word Lewis comes, he'll say, wait. Okay, first you wait. Okay, but the whole logic of farm laws is, there were a lot of issues in the agriculture. Okay. Of course, there are benefits of MSP also. We'll discuss this in agriculture. MSP, minimum support price. So don't look at farm laws from the logic of Lewis model. You look at only our second 5-year plan from the logic of Lewis model. Farm laws, don't look at it from Lewis model. Okay. So farm laws are basically for making our agriculture and agricultural marketing more efficient. This was the objective. This was the agenda, but we could not implement it. That's a different thing. That I will discuss in agriculture, why we did not implement. Okay, so is this clear? Of course, political reasons also. Okay, so don't look at it from Lewis model. Okay, so only fix your mind as of now to the second 5-year plan or the third 5-year plan. Is this clear? Understood? Yeah. So, clear no? Yes, let's move forward. Now see Mahalanobis, PC Mahalanobis. Okay, this I will explain. Brief notes only we will write because it is similar to the Lewis model. So Mahalanobis also believed in which 5-year plan? Second 5. Anyhow, in the 5-year plans, you'll come across this. Next chapter is that only. So PC Mahalanobis, what he was trying to explain is, he was also believing in faster industrialization. Faster industrialization. Okay, faster. Fast. Why faster industrialization? To achieve what? GDP growth at a faster pace. Faster industrialization. Okay. Now for this, Mahalanobis ji gave 2 sectors. Again, he said we will focus on one There is 4-sector model of Mahalanobis and 2-sector also. Don't worry much. Okay, no, I'll just mention. So 2-sector means one is, he was talking about what? Capital goods. Okay, capital goods. 2, he was talking about something like the basic goods. Basic goods like iron, copper, smelting, all that. Basic goods. Okay, which are used as what? Raw materials. Which are used as raw materials by other industries. These are what? Basic goods. Okay, so you know what are capital goods. You're talking about machines, etc. Okay, now the thing is, when I have to draw a graph, okay, till here, this is 2-sector, what he was thinking is, suppose I want growth. I am putting growth here, economic growth, and this is over a period of time, and growth. Growth means take it as economic growth, GDP growth, and time. If I focus on, this is a graph for consumer goods. Initially, our model was this only, consumer goods. We were less into capital, consumer goods. Okay. Consumer goods, you will find, it will be like this. What is like this? This is basically our ICOR, or incremental capital output ratio. Capital output ratio, the amount of capital needed to produce a single unit of output. Okay, that is what is capital output ratio. There is one more question. Yeah. Okay, so here capital output ratio is the amount of capital needed to produce a single unit of output. Okay. Incremental capital output ratio means amount of additional capital. Incremental amount of additional capital. Actually, to be very specific, ICOR means percentage change in capital to percentage change in GDP. Percentage change in capital to percentage change in capital to percentage change in GDP or output. GDP means here output only. Same example, no, the amount of capital needed to produce a single unit of output there. Okay, so that means 4 units of capital needed to produce 1 unit of output. COR we discussed, no? Okay, similarly, if it is 10, capital output ratio is 10. That is capital output ratio. Higher the capital output ratio, it is bad. This is what we discussed. Incremental means adding one additional capital, change, no? One additional capital. How much would be the change with respect to the output? If I add one additional capital, how much would be the change with respect to the output? That is what incremental capital output ratio. Here also, ICOR also, lower it is better. Why lower it is better? If I add one additional capital, I am able to produce more output. If I am adding one additional capital, I am able to produce more output. It means I am more efficient. Everybody, are you able to get this point? Same logic, there is no difference. Capital output ratio, amount of capital needed to produce a single unit of output. Now incremental means if I add one additional capital, what is the change with respect to my output? If I am adding one additional capital, 1 rupee additional, I am getting change with respect to output, 5 units of output has increased. That means I am more efficient. But to get that 2 units, 5 units of output, if I have to change the capital by 2 or 3, means I am less efficient. Same logic. You are able to follow? It is nothing but change in capital to change in GDP. If you don't like GDP, I'll write it as output. If you are getting confused, it is change in output. Same formula. If one additional capital I am changing, if my output is increasing by 5 units, okay, this is one case. 1 unit of capital I am adding, by my output is changing by 10 units. Okay, that means I am more efficient here. 1 unit is bringing in output of 10. Are you able to get this point? Okay, so that means lower is the incremental capital output ratio, better it is. Same like the COR. Lower is the COR, better it is for the country, efficient. Same logic. Now the question is, he says, if I have to put an ICOR graph, to make my capital. That time, our capital is limited for us. We did not have much of capital. Much of capital is not there. If my capital has to be efficient, either I have to focus on consumption goods, okay, like whatever we consume, consumption goods. So consumption goods, what will happen is, your capital will be more efficient, easy to produce. Consumption goods are easy to produce. They are easy to produce than the machines. To produce machines, it is little difficult. But to produce consumption goods, it is easy. So what will happen is, consumption goods, if you focus on consumption goods, the basic consumption goods, what will happen is, your growth will happen fast initially. With time, because your capital is more efficient with respect to consumption goods, first initially growth will be more, but over a period of time what will happen is, the growth will what? Slow down. This will happen when I am focusing on what goods? Consumption goods. Consumption good is something which you are consuming. Capital goods is something like you are focusing on machines, etc., producing machines which will produce other goods. My capital will be, initially when I am spending, my capital will be more efficient, easy, less hiccups will be there with respect to which goods? Consumption goods. Consumption goods, less effort, less problems will be there, and therefore with little capital also, your efficiency is more. Your growth will be with time. Initially there will be a high. There will be a high, and then slowly what will happen over a period of time? It will fall. And what he says, this is a graph for what? Consumption goods or the consumer goods when I am talking about ICOR. Are you able to get this? Okay. Now, but if I talk about the same thing, if I have to put my growth, I am taking growth here, and I am taking time. Now, if I want to focus on capital goods, but the graph will be a little different. The graph will be something like, the capital good graph will be, initially it will be difficult, but over a period of time, the growth will be higher. That means initially the growth will be slow. Why? Because you are focusing on those capital goods or machines which can produce other goods. Okay, your capital will not be so efficient initially, but over a period of time, growth will be faster. See, that means if you are focusing on capital goods, what will happen? Initially, growth may be slow, but later growth will pick up. If you are focusing on consumption goods, what will happen? Initially, growth may be high, but over a period, growth will reduce. Are you able to get this? This is what he was talking about. Initially, growth will be high. Later, the growth will reduce when we talk about consumption goods. Capital goods, initially growth will be less. Later, the growth will be at a faster pace. This is what he was saying. Are you able to get this? So, but he says, Mahalanobis was mainly focusing on what? He says, we will focus on this approach because capital goods only, if we focus over a period of time, it will lead to increased growth. Number one. Number two, he says, we cannot depend on foreign countries. We were importing machines, etc. We were importing machines. Second 5-year plan also, you don't have capital goods, we don't have machines. Your imports are machines also you are importing, you're dependent on other countries. So if you want to become indigenous, you have to focus on what? Capital goods. Are you able to get this? So he was talking about two different things. Okay. So India has to grow at a faster pace, for which he decided industrialization. In this industrialization, faster industrialization, two things. One, capital goods. Two, basic goods. Basic goods are basic industries, means basically these are something like iron and steel industries which will act as a raw material for other industries. Capital goods means you're producing what? Machines. You're producing machines which will be used for producing other goods. If you are focusing on capital goods, initially the growth will be slow because the capital needed is more. Okay, initially the growth will be slow, but over a period of time, growth will be at a higher level. Okay, so this is what he was trying to mention in Mahalanobis was talking about, and he said, well, let's try to focus on heavy industry. This heavy industry means we'll focus on capital goods. Along with that, we'll also focus on basic industries like iron and steel. Everybody says, no, heavy industry model, second 5-year plan, heavy industry. So why iron and steel is the question again. So iron and steel, basic industries, number one. And also he was talking about capital goods because we were mainly importing these capital goods. And over a period of time, long term, our growth will be higher if you think about capital goods. Are you able to get this? Okay. Then, is that okay? So what you should remember is, Mahalanobis focused on heavy industrialization, number one. Okay. Number two, as part of heavy industrialization, one, focus on capital goods, two, basic. Okay. Three, if you focus on capital goods, initially growth will be slow, but over a period of time, growth will increase. But if you focus on consumption goods, initially growth will be higher, okay, and later on growth will slowly come down. Are you able to get this? This is clear, right? This is clear. Then again he will talk about something like the four sector. Okay, not so much. I'll just mention. I'll just write down. Okay, so four sector is nothing but he'll add up agriculture and services also. Four sector. When he's talking about four sector, okay, he talks about. He'll also talk about agriculture. He'll also talk about capital goods. Okay. Three, he will talk about consumption goods. Okay, consumption goods. And four, he will also talk about something called as services. Okay, so he will also talk about all this, but that time the primary focus he was talking about was mainly on capital goods. Are you able to get this? Okay, so in this four sector model, okay, so formulas are not important. Okay, so what he was talking about is output is equal to productivity plus labor. Productivity plus labor efficiency. Okay, productivity plus labor. This I don't think for general studies you need not remember this. You just remember what he has focused on. Okay, so I think for GS this formula is not needed. I think you're getting my point, right? Okay, so we'll try to understand it. Put the heading PC Mahalanobis. Just one page only. PC Mahalanobis. PC Mahalanobis model during second 5-year plan. Okay, so Sangeeta, there is a doubt actually. I'll take it up after 2 minutes. Her doubt is India's first 5-year plan was agriculture based. Then why did we try to use Harrod Domer? Okay. Okay, fine. We'll take it up. So PC Mahalanobis model, second 5-year plan, 56 to 61. Okay. It focused on industrialization. It focused on industrialization. Focused on industrialization based on heavy industries. Based on heavy industries. A, capital goods. B, basic industries. A, capital goods. B, basic industries. See, capital goods I've already discussed earlier. We have written. So for basic industries, mention, okay, iron and steel, comma, copper smelting. Iron and steel, comma, copper smelting, which are used as raw materials. Which are used. Iron and steel, comma, copper smelting, which are used as raw materials for other industries. Iron and steel, comma, copper, which are used as raw materials for other industries. Okay. Okay. Continue. PC Mahalanobis is an investment allocation model. PC Mahalanobis is an investment allocation model. Investment allocation model. Investment allocation model. Okay. Full stop. Mahalanobis two-sector model focuses on. Mahalanobis two-sector model focuses on consumer goods and capital goods. Consumer goods and capital goods. Okay. Full stop. Continue. ICOR. Incremental capital output ratio. Incremental capital output ratio is better for is better for consumer goods. Is better for consumer goods. Okay. Then put the heading ICOR. Okay. Put the heading ICOR. ICOR. Incremental capital output ratio. ICOR. Write down. ICOR is defined as how much additional capital will be required, how much additional capital will be required to produce one additional unit of output. To produce one additional unit of output. Okay. Okay. Then write down ICOR is equal to, write the formula. ICOR is equal to change in capital, write down, change in capital to change in output. Change in capital divided by change in output. Okay. Or continue writing. Okay. Continue writing. Change in capital, write down. Continue writing. Change in capital to GDP. Write it this way. Change in capital to GDP. Okay, change in capital to GDP divided by, write down, change in capital to GDP divided by change in output divided by GDP. Like this you can write. Change in capital to GDP by change in output to GDP. Okay. That is equal to, write down, that is equal to percentage change in investment to percentage change in GDP. Percentage change in GDP. Okay. If you can understand this, this is more than sufficient. Okay. Percentage change in, so then this will be the extension of this. Change in investment. If I am changing the investment, how much is the change with respect to the output or GDP? This is what is ICOR. Okay. Incremental capital. Right. Now write down. ICOR represents, write down. ICOR represents how efficiently the new additional capital, is being used in a country to produce output. Is being used in a country to produce output. Example. If ICOR of India is equal to 6, number 6, that means India requires rupees 6 value of extra capital goods, rupees 6 value of extra capital goods, to produce rupees 1 to produce rupees 1 of additional output. Rupees 1 of additional output. I think it is clear. The concept is clear. So ICOR lower is better or higher is better? Lower is better. Okay. And ICOR is better for consumer goods or capital goods? Consumer goods, it is better. Easy, no? Okay. Then put the graph. Put the consumer good and put the graph. Growth with time. Growth with time. Growth with time. Growth with time. So put the consumer good. Put the consumer growth. This is the consumer good. Growth with time. Initially high and then slowly it may come down. Is that clear? Okay. So this is the graph for consumer good. Okay. Then put the graph for capital good. Put the graph for capital good. Growth with time. This is the graph for capital good. Oh, sorry. This is for the capital good. Consumer good and then for the capital good. Is that okay? Then. Okay. And then after putting those graphs, just mention exponential growth is possible in capital goods. Exponential growth. Exponential growth, after putting these graphs, mention exponential growth is possible in capital goods. Okay, it goes on. Exponential growth is possible in capital goods. Okay. Then just mention Mahalanobis 4 sector. Okay, not so important. Just mention Mahalanobis 4 sector model. Mahalanobis 4 sector model. Okay, so you can also add agriculture and small scale industries also here. Agriculture and small scale industries, capital goods, consumption goods and services. Just write these 4. Is that okay? Okay, put this 4. Agriculture and small scale industries, 2 capital goods, 3 consumption goods. Is that okay? 4 services. 4 services. 4 services. See, what you should understand is Mahalanobis model, though it started off in the second 5-year plan, it carried off till 1990s. That means we were focusing on optimum utilization of resources. No, so till 1990s you can see this model was there inherently. 1990s till 1990s this model was there where you were focusing on heavy industry. It's not that you left it in between. Okay, that means till the 7th 5-year plan is over, and then there was some plan holidays also. I'll talk about it. Okay, then 1992 we had the 8th 5-year plan. 1992. That means till 1990 this Mahalanobis model was the undercurrent. Mahalanobis model was the undercurrent till 1990. That is what you will remember. Then just put the heading, why industry as the prime moving force. Why industry as the prime moving force. Only 3 bullet points there. Then that is done. Why industry as the prime moving force. Only 3 points there, simple points. One, more job creation. More job creation. More job creation. 2, faster growth. 2, faster growth. Faster growth. Faster growth means I'm talking about GDP growth. Yes. Faster growth. 3, services cannot be developed without industry. Services cannot be developed without industry. Services cannot be developed without industry. That's all. Yes.
In the consumer goods graph, you told that ICOR is less for consumer goods in the initial phase. So in the later phase, it is also less or it is more?
ICOR, anytime ICOR will be less, but the output will be a challenge. ICOR means the capital you need to produce consumer goods will always be less. Anytime, yes. But the thing is, its contribution to growth will be limited after a particular period of time. That is the meaning there. Okay, so initially it is high growth. Here the graph is not about with time you're mapping growth, no. So with time when you're mapping growth, your capital is more efficient, no. So capital becomes more efficient with respect to consumption goods. But over a period of time, why growth is falling over a period of time is because consumption over a period of time is going to drop. And job creation will not be happening if you focus on consumption goods. That is the reason.
ICOR for capital goods always be higher.
Obviously, ICOR will be because you need more units of capital to produce a single unit of output or a capital good or a machine. Yes. Is this clear? Okay. Till here, is it okay? And one more thing, Mahalanobis, don't worry much like that formula in UPSC. Two things, when you're reading your macro, so nothing to worry of. Like in macroeconomics, there are two NCRTs. The first NCRT which you should read, I mentioned it earlier, is Indian Economic Development. That has to be read for mains. I'll show you direct questions tomorrow or day after next class. I think next week we have. Directly question is picked up from the book. Directly. For example, there is this question, how globalization has led to informalization of Indian economy and what are the challenges of informal economy? 2018. How globalization has led to informalization and what are the challenges of informalization? Challenges of informal economy. So when we read unemployment or job or whatever it is, we may be thinking unemployment is mainly for prelim, or maybe we may think informalization is mainly for prelim. No, that's a direct question picked up from NCRT. Are you able to get this? No, like this. There was one more question like, the question was, I'll discuss this. Foreign investment is critical factor for growth. Foreign investment is needed for growth. Yesterday we talked about FDI, FI. Okay, foreign investment is critical factor for growth, but over dependence on foreign investment can become even more critical. So this kind of questions, they are all from what? You will find the references in Indian Economic Development. Anyway, I'll make you write these questions from the back. I told you, I think from back you have to write the question and in the first class, right? I'll give you questions, don't worry. So this was one more. There was this question for this topic. No, yesterday we posted one question. Savings is a critical factor for growth. Today you know why savings is a critical factor for growth. Okay. Why savings is a critical. You know the concept, so you can write very properly why savings is a critical factor for growth. Savings will lead to investment. Okay, that you have understood. What are the other things other than savings which can influence growth? This was the question. 10 marker, 150 words. 10 marker means you should check one page plus if you turn the page where you have to end the answer. This should be very clear for us. Okay, so very clear like one, then the second page and the small area where we will write according to UPSC, right? So 150 words. Why savings is important for economic growth? Why savings is important for economic growth means always in economics what you have to do. First thing is divide the question into different parts. Very, very important. Divide the question into that is why savings is an important factor for economic growth. First part. Okay, first part. That means I have to address this part, number one. Number two, what are the other things other than savings which can affect growth? Second part of the question. Generally what we do, we bring the second part of the question in the conclusion. That means what you will do, you will write about savings first, and in the conclusion you will write, other than savings, we have other things also like investment, foreign investment, external commercial borrowing, share market, whatever it is. That is not the way to write. There are two parts of the question. So two parts of the question should be visible for the examiner when you are addressing them. I think you're getting my point. In economics, in our mains, two parts of the question, divide two parts, address each part, Then in the conclusion, you write a balanced conclusion. Are you able to get my point? Okay, then only he will find, okay, he has written both. It is a game of quality and also showing that fellow that I have addressed both. Are you able to follow what I am saying? Similarly, before we go for a break, foreign investment is a critical factor for growth. Critical factor for growth. First part. Second part, over dependence on foreign investment is even more critical. Even more critical means negative. First part is what? Benefits of foreign investment for growth. First part. Second part, if you depend too much on foreign investment, it is not good. Even more critical means not good. Okay. Discuss. Okay. That means what? I should talk about positives of foreign investment. I should also talk about if you depend too much on foreign investment, what is going to happen. Then third, I should, in the conclusion, way forward I will write. What is the way forward? In spite of depending on foreign investment, how will I balance my growth? That means I can't leave foreign investment. I want foreign investment. How do I balance? For balancing anything that is there in current affairs. Now this is what, you're reading our magazine. Okay, you're reading newspaper. Okay, is there anything in newspaper or magazine which I will write in the conclusion and underline, which shows something like I can, in spite of depending on foreign investment, I will still balance my growth. Are you able to figure it out? No. So like this, any economy question, two things in mind. One is divide and address and a balanced question, balanced conclusion. Okay. Two, indirect questions, conclusion from history. History, I will discuss that after discussing few 5-year plans. After discussing few 5-year plans. I think you're able to follow. Okay, no doubt till here, right? Okay, so take a break, we'll continue. I'll take that doubt also after the break, yeah. Okay. Break is done. Okay. Settle down. See, see, the question here is, as India first 5-year plan was agriculture. Okay, first 5-year plan we focused on agriculture. That is what we have written in the 5-year plan also. Then why is it that you are coming up with, investment? Actually, if you go deeper, Herod Dahmer was not specifically used in the plan. Okay, but one reason for using or mentioning Herod Dahmer is Herod Dahmer is a Keynesian model. Okay, so Herod Dahmer is a Keynesian model. Okay, Keynesian model. Okay, J.M. Keynes is an economist. Okay, so what you should understand is what Keynes says is no economy will be naturally stable unless and until there is some interference from the government. Okay, so no economy will be naturally stable. So I'll tell you, the better way to understand is this model, basically Keynesian model, developed from the concept in 1930s when US was facing some financial crisis called Great Depression. 1929-1930, Great Depression. Or have you heard of this word recession? Yes, was it discussed in class? Okay, so what is recession? 2 consecutive quarters you have negative growth. Okay, so is it good or bad? Obviously bad. Okay, so there will be job losses, etc. Okay, so deeper format of recession turns out to become, there's something like slowdown, you have recession, you have depression, etc. 1929-1930, till that time, the capitalists were very overconfident. They said, capitalism means capitalism, that's all. That means what? Capitalism can do anything. This is called overconfidence. That means What does capitalism say? Market is the invisible hand that will set things right. Set things right. Everything will be handled by market. Means the forces of demand and supply. You would have discussed the theory of market equilibrium. Yes, I know. Theory of market equilibrium given by Adam Smith. Adam Smith, right? Now this theory of market equilibrium, how is the price decided? Through market forces. That demand graph, supply graph, it is decided by market forces. But what if the prices don't get adjusted? What if the prices don't get adjusted? They were not thinking. Capitalists were overconfident. They believed, yes, capitalism will work always. What if the markets fail? What if the markets fail? Okay, so this is what happened in 1929, 1930. For example, what happened was, some economists were saying it was mainly because there was a problem with respect to the share markets or stock markets in US. They went down. Okay, so some were saying this. Okay, during that point of time. So if this is the case, for the private player, will it be easy to raise capital or difficult to raise capital? Difficult to raise money, no. Your share market is not doing well. If a company is issuing shares, will you buy? No, you will say, you keep it with you. We don't want your shares. That means raising capital becomes what? Difficult. If it is difficult to raise capital, will he produce more or produce less? He will produce less. Production is less. Okay. If he is producing less, will he create more jobs or less jobs? First of all, he will kick out existing employees. Forget about creation. He will say, please go. That means job losses, unemployment. If this is the case and there is no salary, what will happen to purchasing power? Purchasing power will decrease. You will not have paying capacity. If paying capacity is not there, what will happen to demand for products? Demand for products will not be there. Demand is not there. Demand is not there. Are you able to get this? That is the reason you say this Great Depression and all, the challenge is basically you have to handle what? Demand. You have to handle demand. And if you can handle demand, things will be okay. Now, demand is not there, but if demand is not there, but if there is supply, already existing supply is there in the market, supply is there, okay, supply is there, but demand is not there, supply is more than demand. Suppose for a shopkeeper there is more supply, but there is no demand, what will he do? He will give buy one, get one free, or he will reduce the prices of the goods so that he will empty his shelf. Yes or no? Supply is there, products are there, buyers are not there. You will fall, you will observe that there will be continuous fall with respect to what? Prices. Supply is more, demand is not there. Prices are continuously falling. Then this continuous price fall, we call it as what? Deflation. You know this word, deflation? Deflation is even more dangerous than inflation. That is why when we set our inflation target also, you say 4 plus or minus 2. Means it is between 2 to 6. Means some amount of inflation is needed. Some amount of inflation is needed for the private players to produce. Suppose I start a manufacturing unit, I start buying machinery, I recruited labor, I invested into infrastructure, all that. And I decided to produce products. By the time I start producing, you will find that the product prices are slowly going down. Will I produce? No. Why should I produce when I make loss? So continuously, if there is deflation in the economy, the producers will not be interested to produce products because it is going to make, he is going to make loss. Already I've invested on infrastructure, I've invested on buying whatever machines that are needed, labor I've recruited, I've promised them salaries. Now I produce the product, but the price of the product is going down, then I'll not be interested. So therefore, whenever you find in the developed countries deflation is there, you will also find jobless or unemployment. Deflation, unemployment go together. Inflation, unemployment need not go together. Inflation, that is stagflation, no. We have discussed stagflation. Inflation plus unemployment. But inflation and unemployment need not go together. If they go together, you call it as stagflation. Madam is saying no. Nirmala Sitharaman madam. Madam is saying no stagflation. Madam is saying no stagflation. On one side, inflation is around 7% plus, and that means job loss is not there according to Madam. Okay, so no stagflation she is clearly mentioning. Are you able to get this? But when there is deflation, you will find there will be job loss. Are you able to get this now? So now, this is the period when Keynes, J.M. Keynes was saying, yes, markets can fail, supply demand. So when markets have failed, they thought, yes, governments, we should also learn something from the socialist countries. Learning from the socialist countries is what? Government interference. I can't leave everything to the market when markets are failing. So government interference can be, government can interfere through its budget. Government can interfere through its budget, or we call it as what policy? Fiscal policy. We mentioned that fiscal policy yesterday, no? Revenues on one side, expenditure on other side. Either you can do this, or you can use the banking policy, or which we call it as the monetary policy. Either ways, you will use these policies to stimulate the economy. To stimulate the economy. Are you able to get this? No. So J.M. Keynes says public investment should come. That means government should invest. Now private player fellow will not invest now because market is not good. Then who will invest? Public investment. Public investment means government is spending money from its pocket in the form of maybe expenditure. It's spending its money in the form of subsidy. Government can give subsidy to this producer so that he will increase production. If he increases production, jobs will get created, demand gets created. Once demand gets created, now the private player will say, okay, I will also produce. Are you able to get my point? No. Either he can do it by pushing in subsidy, investment subsidy, or government can come up with rail projects. Now in the budget, government says public investment is important. Why? Our economy is not good. So 2022-23, they are saying more than 32%, around 32%, there will be spending, public investment will be there. That means government will spend on infrastructure or on machinery or whatever it is. Are you able to get this point? So same logic here, government is spending and government is coming up with investment, maybe rail project, road project, jobs will get created, demand will get reversed. Then the private player will come. Otherwise, the cycle will keep on continuing. To break this cycle, public investment is needed either in the form of subsidy or maybe in the form of tax concession. You are saying we'll reduce taxes for the people, then people will pay less tax to the government. Okay, then automatically they'll have more money. Don't pay much tax to the government means automatically you'll have more money. So demand will increase. When demand increases, again the cycle will continue. Are you able to get my point now? Now, what we believed initially, Russian model. Our planning is based on Russian model. Okay. And Russian model believes we will not leave things to the market. We will not leave things to the market. Why? Because we already had enough experience of British rule. We have enough experience of 1813 Charter Act. History mein. 1813 Charter Act, no. It removed the monopoly of East India Company. It has hit our artisanal sector completely. Weavers, etc. They became laborers and workers in foreign companies. Are you able to get my point? So we have a very good experience of capitalism earlier. Moreover, after independence, needs become more important. Needs become more important to be addressed after independence. Why? India's case, we had starvation. Okay. There were issues of health, education, and all these. That means addressing needs becomes more important than addressing wants. Okay. There's a difference between need versus want. Need versus wants. There's a difference. Capitalism sells needs, wants as needs. For example, in China, one fellow sold his kidney. For what? iPhone. iPhone. For what? iPhone. Means he felt what? iPhone is want or need? No, extreme need. Extreme need. You said, take my kidney. and you give iPhone means it is not want, it is basically need. Are you able to get my point now? This is capitalism basically. Of course, positive is there, negative is there. Now what you should understand is, you have to take care of poor people, basic hunger, giving them food grains is need. Giving KFC chicken is want. Are you able to get my point? So I cannot directly focus on pure market. No pure market. Pure market is mainly basically dealing with what? Demand and supply. What is demand? It is not just my willingness to buy a product, but also my ability to pay. Ability to pay. If I don't have the ability to pay, that means you are not part of the demand, you are excluded from the market. Many people are excluded from the market because India was a poor country. Are you able to get my point? And therefore, I cannot go ahead with pure market economy during that point of time. Now also it is, we are facing problems. It's not that everybody can buy education or health. Are you able to get this? Okay, so that is the challenge. And Keynesian economics talks about what? Along with market, you also have to focus on public investment, that is government's interference. Harrod Dommer also believes a similar kind, or Harrod Dommer is also a similar kind of model in line with the Keynesian model, where it says naturally the economy cannot be balanced. It has to have some external assistance in the form of government interference. So we also believed Harrod Dommer is a Keynesian kind of model, and after independence we also thought India also needs to focus not just on market, but also government also has to interfere. So this was the logic in their mind for adopting this model called Harrod Dommer. Logic. Nobody will ask the logic, of course. Why Harrod Dommer was taken is, if Harrod Dommer would have been a pure capitalist model, they wouldn't have taken Harrod Dommer. Harrod Dommer is very close to a Keynesian model where you are talking about government's interference, public investment. That is the reason we have taken Harrod Dommer in the first 5-year plan. Are you able to? There's a reason. But at the same time, agriculture was focused. They said we will focus on agriculture out of necessity. Necessity. Why? Starvation, dependent on other countries for food grains. Okay, so you obviously have to focus on agriculture. Along with that, remember, after independence, it was not agriculture what was the prime moving force. It was what? Industry, which is our prime moving force. I have made you write that. Industry as the prime moving force for India. And therefore, obviously, investment was there in our mind. These are the two reasons. One, industry being the prime moving force. Two, Harrod Dommer being a Keynesian model. These are the reasons for taking Harrod Dommer, but we did not implement it effectively. All that is. 3 is fascination, I told you, no. Okay, that you can't write in exam. Okay, so that is. Is this clear? Understood? Enough. Okay. Dictated ICOR is better for consumer. What does that? Okay, I'll take that question a little later. Now, ICOR is better. ICOR means capital is efficient for producing consumption goods rather than capital goods. That was my meaning. Okay, so let's go ahead with our discussion on. Okay, I will tell you which I will be dictating planning also, but I will not dictate the facts in each plan for which PPT is there. Are you able to get my point? Okay, first 5-year plan, facts are there, second 5-year plan, facts. These PPT is there, I'll explain from the PPT and PPT is given. That dictation, I think it is waste of time because already a PPT is available for that. Okay, now obviously the first question comes up. Okay, why did we decide for something like a planning model first of all? The first question is obviously, why did India go ahead with a planning model? Planning model? Okay, planning model, why did we plan? Okay, what do you think is the reason? First question. Okay, second question is, why is it that we did not go ahead with pure market economy. Pure market economy, though Nehruji is Western educated. You see Nehruji, he looks more like, he knows everything about what is happening in the Western countries. He's more Western educated, okay. But still, he did not adopt principles of capitalism. Rather, we have adopted principles of socialism, okay, socialism. But of course, our socialism was a little different. Our socialism was a little different from the erstwhile USSR. Our socialism was little different from erstwhile USSR, which we called it as something like, we called it as mixed economy. Heard of this word? Yes, we called it as something like the mixed economy. You know this word, right? Okay, so though we followed principles of socialism, our socialism was quite different from erstwhile USSR. And we said we are going to follow something like mixed economy. Mixed economy means we'll have both public sector plus private sector moving hand in hand. They said it will move hand in hand, but it did not. That's a different thing. But we said both public and private sector will move hand in hand, and we are going to adopt principles of what? Mixed economy. But if we observe, our growth was mainly driven by PSU. PSU? Public sector units. Public sector units. Okay. So why did we adopt these principles is the question. Why did we adopt these principles is the question. Okay. So it is obviously the situation of India during that point of time. Most importantly, the situation of India during that point of time was the main reason. So what was the situation of India just after independence is the question. So just after independence, India's situation was very bad. Just after independence, India's situation, one, we did not have a proper private sector that is developed. Our private sector is still not developed. Everybody, you know this. Okay, our private sector is still not developed, and we had problems which you know, we call it as the drain of wealth. Heard of this word? Drain of wealth theory. Okay, drain of wealth theory. Okay, our resources were taken away completely. Okay, and our past experience with respect to capitalism. See, of course, Kautilya's Arthashastra never supported king's interference. Kautilya's Arthashastra never supported king's interference into economic activities. That means Kautilya was pro what? Market. Not capitalism. Kautilya was pro market. But Gandhiji's favorite quotation, there are enough resources for people's need, but not for their greed. This is Gandhiji's quotation. There are enough resources for people's need, but not for their greed. Indirectly, Gandhiji believes that capitalism may lead to exploitation. Indirectly, he believes that there will be too much of self-interest. There will be too much of self-interest in capitalism. Are you able to get this point, right? And also one more observation, if you compare Nehruvian model and Gandhian model, Gandhiji believed in trusteeship. Trusteeship, that means even government will not be the owner of the assets. When we talk about the factors of production like land, etc., even government should not be owning. You're only a trustee. There's a difference between the owner and a trustee. Trustee means on behalf of public, you're just operating it. This is what Gandhiji was saying. But the model which we adopted was not Gandhian model. Rather, the model which we have adapted is Nehruvian model, number one. Are you able to get this? Another important aspect is the planning system or our planning process itself was more of centralized nature. Centralized means what? Centralized means you take decisions at the top and you push it to the states, you push it to the villages. Are you able to get this? You're taking a policy, something like one size fits all. One size fits all. I take a policy and I push it to the bottom, I push it to the states. Are you able to get this? Okay, but Gandhiji believed in what? Masses. Gandhiji was believing in decentralization. Are you able to get this? Decentralization, or Gandhiji was talking about more of villages and decentralization, or he had a belief, we had a trust with respect to masses. Okay, are you able to get this? No, there's a slight differentiation which you can clearly observe between Gandhian policy and Nehruvian policy. But our policy which we adopted for our planning, which we adopted from USSR, was mainly a Nehruvian model. And that is the reason in our planning you will find more of, initially it is a centralized planning. Centralized planning. Are you able to get this? Centralized planning, or we call it as something like imperative planning. I'll come to that. Centralized planning or imperative planning. So what happens here? It is basically a it's basically a top-down approach. Top-down, take the policy, frame the policy at the top and push it to the bottom. Okay. But why didn't we take up Gandhian model? Because Gandhian model is more of idealistic. You know what is idealistic? It is a difficult thing to follow. Gandhian model is difficult because literacy is not there. Okay, so policies at the state level, how they take, we do not know. So since Gandhian model is more idealistic in nature, we decided to directly adopt the socialist model of Russia, which is more of centralized. So initial years of planning, obviously we followed a centralized planning model where the decisions were taken at the top and pushed to the bottom. Nothing wrong, okay. And what was the situation? We had bad experiences also with respect to capitalism, including the charter acts like 1813, etc. We have understood enough what will happen if we give things to the market. Another important aspect is needs have to be addressed. Needs have to be addressed, and you cannot leave needs to the market. You cannot leave needs to the market. Needs to be addressed means here we are talking about handling issues like one. Poverty is over for us, right? Poverty. You have to handle issues like problems like unemployment. Okay. So these are something like that have to be addressed, and these things cannot be addressed by a private player. And therefore we decided we will go ahead with a centralized planning on one side. On the other side, we also decided that we'll adopt principles of what? Socialism. But our socialism will be a little different. Our socialism will be called as what? Mixed economy, where both public and private sector will operate together. Is this clear? And one more most important reason for coming up with planning. Most important reason is you have limited resources. Limited resources. Without resources, if you have to operate, it is very difficult. Okay. So if you want to use your limited resources effectively, efficiently, you need something called as planning. Without planning, you cannot use the resources efficiently. This is also one of the reasons for coming up with planning. Are you able to get this? So that is the reason why we went ahead with something called as planning. Everybody has understood? Two things. One, why planning? Why not pure market? Three, it's also not pure socialism. We came up with the concept of what? Mixed economy. I think these three things are clear. Okay. So just put the heading planning. Planning, yeah. I think it is easy only. I've understood, right? There's no much tension here. Just mention one paragraph there. Okay. Economic planning refers to allocation of resources in a comprehensive way. To achieve the predetermined objectives to achieve the predetermined objectives with optimal utilization of resources. With optimal utilization of resources. Okay. Next paragraph. In India, economic planning was adopted. In India, economic planning was adopted in 1951. In 1951, in an economic system characterized by coexistence of public and private sector. Coexistence of public and private sector. Okay, full stop and continue. For 4 decades, the public sector was considered as the engine of growth. Public sector was considered as the engine of growth. However, with the beginning of the liberalization process, I will discuss that when I touch 1990, liberalization process. 1991 you can mention in brackets. Beginning of liberalization process, the government started withdrawing from direct involvement in productive activities. Withdrawing from direct involvement in productive activities. And hence, the private sector has now become the dominant sector. And the public sector is merely an adjunct to the former. ADJUNT, adjunct, or an addition, an adjunct to the former. Is this clear? Okay. Then put the heading rationale of economic planning. Rationale of economic planning. Rationale of economic planning. Okay, fine. I'll explain, we'll write some points there, few things what we have already discussed, then we will then I'll explain. Start writing. The common perception at the time of independence was common perception at the time of independence was that economic planning, if adopted, in India's democratic framework, could put this country's economy on a high growth trajectory. Okay, under that first point, failure of market mechanism. Failure of market mechanism. Continue there. When India got independence in 1947, it was economically backward. Continue, full stop. To develop rapidly in a short period, it was believed that market mechanism should be complemented. With government's planning. Market mechanism should be complemented with government's planning to achieve the desired economic growth. Okay, that is clear, no? Okay, so then let me discuss. See here, when we talk about our country, okay, so we decided, that means primarily one of the most important long-term objective of planning was obviously is what? Economic growth. That is the reason every 5-year plan you will find targeted growth, achieved growth. This is what is clearly visible. That means what? One of the important long-term objective of planning is economic growth. I'll talk about what was a problem, etc. But along with that, what we believed is, as part of our constitution is concerned also, we also wanted to ensure something called as social justice. Very important. We also wanted to ensure social justice. And for ensuring social justice, what is needed? We also believed that this growth will lead to social justice. Now, this is a belief. Which went wrong. This is a belief which failed. The belief was what? If I can focus on economic growth, social justice will also be ensured. How social justice will also be ensured? Social justice will also be ensured through the concept of trickle-down theory. Heard of this? Okay. Now the next question, if I ask you, in India, we focused on social justice. We wanted social justice. That is the reason all the syllabus topics, if you see, something related to poor, something related to social justice, our mains paper is filled with those topics. You will have 40%, 35 to 40% coming from agriculture, food security, employment, land reforms. Are you able to get my point? Why? Because you will not find questions on capital market, share market. Why? Because it is basically for a bureaucrat. Bureaucrat has to work on this aspect. What aspect? Trickle down, or bureaucrat has to work on ensuring what? Social justice. See, if we talk about land reforms, why did we come up with land reforms? Initially, because of the useless British tenure systems like Zamindari, Raitwari, Mahalwari. Heard of them? Okay, so the Zamindari system, because of Zamindari system, by the time of 1952, almost 58% of the land was under the control of Zamindars. Okay, 58% of the land. Now, how will you ensure social justice in rural areas unless and until you distribute land? Are you able to get this? Okay, so unless and until you distribute land, you cannot ensure social justice. That is the reason we decided to come up with something like land reforms in the format of Zamindari abolition. Zamindari abolition. That is why. Why? Because your objective of planning was also to ensure what? Social justice. Are you able to get this point? Now, what do you think would have been the main reason in India, or main reasons for India, for failure of trickle down? Can you think of some points from a wider perspective? Don't fix to planning alone. Why do you think, like in India, what do you think are the main reasons for failure of trickle down? What is trickle down basically? Trickle down theory is an expectation. Trickle down theory is an expectation that, trickle down theory is an expectation that if I can focus on something like growth, you are giving concessions to the upper sections of the society, the producers basically, like Reliance or Tatas, so that they will increase something called as what? GDP growth. They produce more. The expectation is this benefits of the growth will percolate down to the masses. This benefits of the growth will percolate down to the masses. So this growth will also handle issues related to poverty. This growth will handle issues related to jobs. This growth will handle issues related to food security. This growth will also lead to help government to spend more money on social sectors. Social sectors like education or health. This is what was the expectation. That is the reason till the sixth 5-year plan, we did not have a particular strategy to directly handle something called as poverty. No specific strategy to handle poverty till the sixth plan. Why? Because we believed that if GDP increases, if growth increases, automatically the benefits will percolate down to the masses. We were under assumption that poverty will be handled, job creation will happen through industrialization, and thereby even these social sectors, everything can be handled. But in India, trickle-down theory was a failure. Means growth could not ensure something called as social justice. Growth could not ensure social justice. Growth could not handle problems at the bottom level like food, job, food security, whatever it is. That is the reason concepts like inclusiveness. Now the question is, if I ask you, can you give me some 4 or 5 points why trickle-down theory would have failed in India? What do you think would have been the reasons for failure of trickle-down? You know what is trickle-down? So can you guess why trickle-down would have failed? Improper distribution of resources. What he says is, was actually why was planning done, you know? Planning was done and states were also put under control so that states will also centralize planning, so that states will also spend money on priority sectors. Priority sectors means you have to spend more money on agriculture or spend more money on micro, small and medium enterprises. That means your focus should be on priority sectors, but of course the point is taken, that means improper allocation of resources. This is his point, improper allocation of resources. So first point what he was trying to say is there is a big problem in terms of allocation of resources. So resource allocation was a main problem. Okay, fine, point taken. Anything else? Reinvestment of capital. Okay.
Firstly, the factor of production is controlled by few peoples. Secondly, sir, the laws which are made, the laws made by the government but not complied by these big industries, so that trickle down approach do not gain benefit for the masses.
Okay, so legal reasons you are talking about. Okay, laws and legal. Think from the common economic perspective. Yeah, legal laws means suppose you came up with land reforms. Land reforms was only a partial success. Okay, you came up with ration shops, but food grain is siphoned off in the open market. During COVID also, they were buying ration for 4 rupees and they were selling in the market for 16. Those who were given ration. Okay, that is all morality, ethic. We can't help. That you can't change. Think from the economic perspective, other reasons. Okay. Our growth was not inclusive. Use economic terms, no? Growth was not inclusive. No inclusive growth. Inclusive growth. Okay, inclusive growth. Okay. Second, another important thing, our growth was mainly what? Growth which you were talking about was mainly, I want some words, words. Capital intensive. Heard of this word? Okay. The growth was capital intensive rather than labor intensive. Labor intensive, capital intensive. Mahalanobis model, heavy industry. Every rupee spent on iron and steel, if the same rupee is spent on textiles will create 300 more jobs in comparison to iron and steel, according to the statistics of 2011-12 survey. Are you able to get my point? That means for every rupee spent on iron and steel, if I spend the same rupee on textiles will create more jobs in comparison to iron and steel. That means our growth which we got was mainly what intensive? Capital intensive rather than labor intensive. So some key words I just wanted. So that was also a reason for failure of trickle down. Yes. Then too much of trust and too much of belief on what? PSU led growth. Too much of trust or too much of belief on PSU. Most of the PSUs were making losses, and and PSUs making loss is one, and they were adamant. Competition was not there. We were more of a closed economy. Bajaj Chetak, if you have to bend and kick it, that's all. I still remember. Okay, so the bending it properly and kicking it. Then I used to say, why should you bend every time now? Okay, innovation is not there. Competition is not there. Innovation is not there. Okay, laid back attitude. PSU led growth model was not working out the way it has to. I think you got my point. No, over dependence, too much of focus on PSU was also a reason for failure of trickle down. Another important challenge is the trickle down should happen. Government schemes have been implemented. That means there was lot of inefficiency with respect to government schemes launched. Inefficiency can be with respect to not just corruption. We generally think inefficiency means corruption. Corruption is generally there in our blood. Leave that. Along with corruption, okay, corruption is there. Along with corruption, there are other things like targeting the BPL families. BPL, you have read, no? Poverty. Okay, so targeting issues will be there. Okay, BPL you'll APL will take the benefits of BPL families. Okay, all these are issues, no, targeting issues, etc. All these come under this inefficiency with government schemes. You cannot think of trickle down. Another important problem is what happened is in India, there is stagnation with respect to very important sector. Even today, we have to do something with respect to this sector. Stagnation with respect to the manufacturing. That means if there is stagnation in manufacturing, people could not, like Lewis was saying, no, Lewis was saying, shift people here. First of all, if this is stagnant, how will I shift people? People had to stay with what? Agriculture means pressure on land increased, pressure on land increased, pressure on land. People started depending only on agriculture and incomes were less in agriculture for them. Productivity is less, income is less. So that means how will you focus on trickle down when this is also a problem. You know, manufacturing sector was an important aspect. Till now, I think from our knowledge, you could have guessed these. Anything else? Okay, so what she says is one size fits all. You came up with a centralized policy. Okay, centralized policy. You thought this policy will work for everybody. Every state is completely different even today. How is Kerala's growth relate? How Kerala grows? Kerala's growth is based on what? Kerala's growth is based on remittances. Most of the Keralites believe in going abroad, that to Gulf countries. Education, 100% literacy, unemployment rate 13%. Unemployment rate, so 13%. Okay. Then how about Orissa and Chhattisgarh? The growth of these states happened through what? Natural resources. Natural resources. Resource-driven growth. Hyderabad, Bangalore, only services. IT. So each place, each area has a different growth model. One size fits all means there will be challenges with respect to implementation. Are you able to get my point? Okay. So just to write down. You have understood, right? Trickle down, right? Very good. To ensuring social justice. Ensuring social justice. Write down. Second point, no? Yes. Ensuring social justice. In a free enterprise economy, the benefits of economic growth rarely trickle down. Hence, in an underdeveloped country like India, the state intervention to undertake poverty alleviation programs, ALLE. State intervention to undertake poverty alleviation programs in the overall framework of economic planning, is necessary. Overall framework of economic planning is necessary. Is this clear? Okay. There only you can mention reasons for failure of trickle down. Reasons for failure. Many other reasons also there. There we'll add up later, but just mention reasons for failure of trickle down. Reasons for failure of trickle down. Okay. Okay. One, India's growth process was capital intensive. India's growth process was capital intensive rather than labor intensive. Rather than labor intensive. Two, failure of PSU-led growth model. Failure of PSU-led growth model. Failure of PSU-led growth model or over dependence on PSUs. Over dependence on PSUs for ensuring higher growth. Over dependence on PSUs for ensuring higher growth. Okay. 3, lack of inclusive growth. 3, lack of inclusive growth. Lack of inclusive growth. Inclusive growth, again I will mention this in the 11th 5-year plan. Okay, inclusive growth, word is clear, no? Okay, lack of inclusive growth. Next point, inefficiencies, yeah. Lower taxation leads to more unemployment. I will take it the reverse way. More unemployment leads to less tax collection. Is that okay? Okay. What I'm saying is less jobs, less income tax payments, less tax collections. Is that okay? Yes. Providing of capital allowances. Yeah. Yes. Many points are there. Actually, if you see, India's tax to, again, no tax here. Oh, wait. Back to planning. Okay, let's write this first. Taxing is not done, no? Chalo. Now, first let's do step by step. Yes. Liko. Inefficiencies with respect to government schemes. Inefficiencies with respect to government schemes. Okay. Next point. Government did not have a specific strategy. Government did not have a specific strategy. In the 5-year plans. In the 5-year plans to handle unemployment. Okay. See, listen very carefully. Indira madam, yes, madam, very strong madam. Now, madam in 1971, listen, class is not over. Madam in 1971 mentioned, it is not Indira Hatao, it is Garibi Hatao. Madam mentioned, no, not Indira Hatao, it is Garibi Hatao. Okay, that means the concept of Garibi Hatao or directly talking about hunger or poverty came up in the 5th plan. Came up in the which plan? 5th plan. Then what were we doing in the first 4 plans? We were sleeping. Okay, so are you able to get my point? That means direct focus on poverty was not there till the 5th or the 6th 5-year plan. Specific strategy was not there. Are you able to get this point? That is also a reason. Okay, next point. Till the 6th 5-year plan, write down. We believed that we believed that economic growth will solve the problems of poverty, comma, unemployment, comma, issues of food security, comma, social security spending, social sector spending, etc. Okay, clear there? Okay, next point. Stagnation of manufacturing sector. Increasing the pressure on land. I didn't mention that. I mentioned it already. Not same point. Next point. No. For every point I can't say next. You should understand. Okay. Now this is the next point. Stagnation of manufacturing sector. Increasing the pressure on land, leading to disguised unemployment. You know this word. Leading to disguised unemployment. That is also okay. Last point. Centralized planning could not understand the needs at the grassroots level. Centralized planning could not understand the needs at the grassroots level. Is that okay? Fine. Still it is not done. One last side heading. No. Wait. Otherwise what will happen is, okay, at least put the heading and leave. Put the heading mobilization and allocation of resources and leave. Next class we will discuss. Put the heading mobilization and allocation of resources. That's all. Leave it there so that we will continue from there. That's all. Thank you. Yes. Done.